So as a lot of you know, I recently went to Japan. I took a bunch of short videos and everyone asked for like a compilation and or a full-length video. I decided to make a full-length video and here it is. I climbed a bunch of mountains and I was hiking about like 12 miles a day. I witnessed some gorgeous views, I met some wonderful people, and I also visited the infamous Aokigahara forest. One of the main goals of my trip was to investigate the claims that people had made about people getting lost in the Aokigahara forest. These people had claimed that lava rock or magnetic fields or even paranormal activity was to blame when it came to compasses, GPSs, and phone navigation kind of going haywire. Well, I spent a couple days there and this is what I found. The only time compasses or even GPSs were really affected was when I would press them right up against the lava rock. I would shoot an azimuth from one point to another, turn around and go the other way, and they were absolutely dead on. So no, I don't think there's any magnetic fields really strong enough in that forest to really affect the compass or a GPS that bad. The phone wasn't affected at all for some reason, although its coordinates were way off, and I'll get back to that later. The lava rock had a bunch of holes in it where you'd find like these deep caverns or caves. In fact, it's known for a wind cave and an ice cave. There's a lot of caves over there, and even if they're small, sometimes you can feel air coming out, which means they're leading somewhere else. Pace count was kind of affected pretty bad because first off, you couldn't actually shoot too long or far of an azimuth because it's so dense. And then the next thing was the structure created by the lava rock was just so aggressive. But when it comes down to the paranormal activity that was claimed, I never really noticed too much of anything except for one tiny clip. I was setting up camp one night and all of a sudden my camera starts focusing on something that's not even there. It just zooms in and then it zooms back out. Or zooms out and zooms back in, whatever. But either way, it was focusing on something that was not there. That's about it. That's the only paranormal activity I experienced. So I'm sorry if like my compass didn't start going in circles because some ghost started doing something. It never happened. I didn't experience it. So I can't say anything about those claims. I was not affected by anything. And I didn't feel creeped out. I didn't feel like anything was watching me. In fact, I actually felt pretty peaceful in that forest. It's kind of a nice area, man. It was eerie when it was dark and rainy, but it was gorgeous when it was bright and sunny.
It's not that bad. Well, I'm not saying I'd like to build a summer home here, but the trees are actually quite lovely.
Also, one of the biggest problems I found out too freaking late, Japan has a completely different system of plotting coordinates.
Who would have thought? Not me.
When I drew all the lines on the maps that I bought from the bookstore, I was already in the forest and found out that these what should be squares, so I could go 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer as I was taught with the USGI maps or the US topo maps, they were rectangles. And I was thoroughly confused by this because that's not the way I was taught by Eric. I decided not to use the map. I just took my distance and direction and was able to basically pinpoint and guesstimate where I was in the forest in certain areas. The Mercator system treats the world like a cylinder, and the world's not a cylinder, it's a sphere.
The Earth is actually flat.
Now what threw me off was that the coordinates on the USGS maps or US topo maps versus the maps I had picked up from the bookstore, they were so close, but just far enough off that I knew something was wrong. And at this point I was like, I just can't use the maps. Maybe when they printed them out, they printed them scale to fit the paper, you know, like you can do sometimes, which is actually a bad thing because it messes up the scale. Well, the scale was actually 100% right. Everything on there was right. And I didn't realize this until I got back home to the US. So from what I understand, this Japanese professor or whatever his title was, it actually made a more accurate map system. The plotting coordinates are a lot harder on it, and it's not compatible with the way that I was taught on how to use a map in navigation, because I was taught on US topo or USGS maps. So that was an ultimate fail on my part, but I learned something the hard way. Hopefully you guys know that from now on. You can actually get USGS maps for Japan and have them printed out as staples out there, and then you'll be fine navigating. So next time I go, I would be doing that instead. So there was one night that I decided I wanted to spend the night, and I whipped out what I had put in my pack as what I considered to be emergency backup equipment. I said, you know what, I can make a shelter with 2 Mylar ponchos and this tiny little string hammock that I had from like years ago. Threw it in my bag and I said, that's a shelter. Well, here's what it comes to. When picking out your emergency equipment, you really need to test it. I had never tested this theory. I just thought of it as a theory, and theoretically it could work, except for the fact that it was absolutely downpouring the night I was trying to build this shelter. I got completely soaked, and I was tempted to build a fire, but there were so many signs up that said, do not build fires. The last thing I wanted to do was go to a different country and disrespect the rules and regulations, so I opted out from doing that. And the shelter was somewhat insufficient for my body size. I had never unraveled that hammock, and that was an absolute amateur mistake. I barely fit on top of that thing. It was so small. If I had it to do over, I would take a hammock, but one that was large enough to fit my body, and then like a tube tent. But I made the foolish decision to not test my equipment first. Let that be a lesson to everybody, especially myself, that even if you think something works in theory, it's good to test it. Otherwise, you might find yourself in a worse position than if you just planned appropriately. I actually packed up, and I'm glad I did, because I ended up getting sick anyway. So if I had spent the night there completely drenched, I would have gotten more sick. So seeing as the buses had already left, and I was not going to be spending a night in the woods unless I started a fire, which was absolutely banned. You can't start a fire in those woods, and I didn't want to start breaking rules and regulations in a country that I am not native to. I decided to take a walk down the street. I walked a couple miles down the street to a village, which said it had a bunch of inns. So I go down there, but it's already dark. It's absolutely pitch dark outside. I start knocking on doors, and nobody's answering the door. After about the 7th door I knocked on, which was considered an inn, and it was advertised as such on Google Maps, this like 4-foot tall lady comes to the door. Absolutely wonderful lady. And I didn't speak a lick of Japanese. She didn't speak a lick of English, but I had just enough battery on my phone for Google Translate. So I just shoved my phone in her face with the words, "Can I stay here for the night?" And this wonderful 4-foot tall, she probably wasn't 4 foot tall, but I mean, she was pretty short. I got this deer antler sticking out of the back of my backpack. I'm 6 foot tall. It's dark out. And I'm shoving my phone in her face that says, "Can I stay the night here?" She just welcomed me in, and she apologized. She's like, "I don't have any food." I was like, "No, that's fine. I don't need food. You know, I can fast. I don't need food all the time, right? Got to maintain my girlish figure." I'm completely drenched. My boots, my pants, my shirt, my jacket. I was even wearing a Gore-Tex jacket, and water even got inside there. And that's only because I lifted up my arm. So, word to the wise, don't lift your arm when it's raining out. She drew this bath that was super hot. It's awesome. It's called an onsen. If you've never had an onsen before, you got to try it. It's actually pretty cool. First time I ever went to an onsen, I came out completely lightheaded. It was quite an experience. She washed and dried my clothes. She gave me tea. She gave me food. She gave me chocolate bars. She gave me clementines. What a wonderful lady. As we're trying to communicate back and forth with the Google Translate, she was absolutely adorable. Like every time she didn't get the words right, she gets so frustrated with herself. I was genuinely blessed to meet this person. When I got up, she got up to wish me a goodbye and send me on my way. I went back into the forest, and I'm very grateful to have met her. What I miss about Japan is the food. Because when I came back to America, I was sick for days, puking, because the food here is just so unhealthy. It really is. The food there was wonderful. I actually I was like 210 before I left. I was 192 when I got back. And I was eating. I mean, granted, I was hiking 12 miles a day, but still, I mean, I was eating a lot. Even getting back to the airport at JFK, I just realized, it just hit me how absolutely rude Americans are. We're just jerks. But the people in Japan were so freaking kind. They were just absolutely wonderful people. I would and I'm not a trusting individual, I would leave my backpack at a bus stop, walk away, grab myself a brew, and get back to my backpack, and nobody touched it. And I felt trustworthy enough to do that. Like, I actually trusted the people around. Like, nobody told me, "Hey, you can leave your backpack here." I just felt like I could do that because that's how wonderful the people there were. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you guys sticking around to the end of the video, and I hope that I'm bringing valuable content to you guys. As the years go by, our channels are going to grow, and we're going to bring better and better products as well as better and better videos to you. So please stick around for the rest of the ride with Calculated Survival as we continue to grow and hopefully become a name in the survival community to help people not only survive the wilderness, but also the urban streets. Stay safe for the people you love, and keep the people that you love safe. I appreciate you so much, and I'll catch you on the next video.